Today, we're going to be looking at misconceptions around masking, and here to help us is Kerrie Highcock of the Northeast Autism Society. Kerrie, could you just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do with the NIAS?
Yeah, so at NIAS, I'm the Family Development Manager. So I do a lot of work with families pre, during, and after diagnosis. So it's very much a role around supporting families in, bespoke ways. Whatever support they need, we kind of are on offer to do that. I also lead on our Autism Acceptance Award as well, where we look at, how can we make, really society better for autistic people.
And how do you come across masking in your work? Is it something that you have to deal with?
Wow, yes. So masking is a vital part of my role, I suppose. I couldn't do my role really without understanding masking. And I think it would be very um, silly of me not to understand masking when you're working with autistic people. So I work with a lot of children and young people, Julie, who are very good at masking in school, out in the community, generally throughout their daily lives. Masking has become an inherent part of who they are and how they survive and they get through the day. So I see it all of the time, and I also see the impact that has around mental health as well. I also do work with adults, and I've got several autistic friends as well in my life. And masking again is, I think when we talk about masking, we often talk about just children, and it's something that they're going to grow out of. Well, absolutely not. And that's probably one of the misconceptions. Children and autistic adults, can and will and do all mask.
Right, okay. So you mentioned misconceptions there. What do you think are the main misconceptions around masking, both in mainstream and perhaps still within professional settings as well?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions around masking is the idea that it doesn't exist. So I still work alongside professionals that, may have never come across the terminology masking and quite uneducated around it and don't really know what that means for a child, a young person or an adult. And also this idea that the child in some way is being manipulative and isn't really masking at all. It's just they're choosing to behave in a different way in school and at home. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. We've got to get professionals everywhere really understanding that, first of all, masking exists and what that might look like for an individual child. I think we've also got gender misconceptions. There's a lot kind of people talk about there's only girls, there's only females mask. Again, that is not true at all. Males and females, all genders mask. It isn't more prevalent, I don't think. It might just look different in females, perhaps, but I don't think it's more prevalent across the genders. I think as well, one of the other big misconceptions is around, well, you would be able to see it quite evidently within a school setting or within a college provision or whatever. And it's not always easy to spot. Autistic people get very good at trying really, really hard to fit into a society that's been designed really for non-autistic people. So it's not always easy to spot, and I think this is where some of the difficulties arise. We've got some wonderful teachers out there who teach in very big classes. So, when you've got a class full of 25 to 30 children, it might be very difficult to pick up on those very subtle cues that a child is masking. But we've got to get better at it. We really have got to get better at understanding.
These misconceptions can be dangerous. Do you think they have an impact on people in their lives?
I think the misconceptions around masking are completely dangerous. So we know that masking will feed into mental health difficulties. There's tons of research being done and has been done around that. We know that masking can feed into things like suicide ideation, autistic burnout. If you were not able to be your true autistic authentic self on a daily basis, that is tiring. It's really exhausting. And I think, that feeds into the mental health crisis that we have for autistic people across the world. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. And I think the other thing is, we've got this idea that everybody masks, and that is true. So everybody does mask. I come into work and I put on a certain mask and I have to behave a certain way in a work setting. If I'm out and about on a weekend, I might behave very differently. However, the difference is for autistic people, it becomes a survival strategy. It's the only way that they can cope getting on in the world, you know. So I think it's a little bit like the idea that people say everybody is a little bit autistic, which is not helpful at all and is completely dangerous. I think that's you know, we could draw a parallel there with this idea that everybody masks. Well, yes, everybody does. However, the impact and the reason and the functioning between non-autistic people and autistic people is often quite different, and it can be incredibly damaging.
Okay, so how can we get beyond these misconceptions? Is more research needed or more?
I think to get rid of some of these misconceptions, people have got to start listening. I think one of the big things is we still have a lot of flawed theories out there around what autism is and what it isn't. We've got to start listening to autistic people themselves rather than, you know, talking about things that have, you know, been completely just aren't really relevant anymore. You know, things like triad of impairments and all these kind of theories. We've got to listen to the autistic people themselves and learn from that. We need much more research. You know, there's tons more research being done around this, particularly looking, you know, at hopefully at younger people as well, so at young adolescents. For me, it's always very much about listening. Why do we not listen to the real life experiences? Because I'm a professional in this field, but I am not autistic. So the work that I do, the training that I deliver, the sessions I do with families are all informed from an autistic perspective. The research I read is often with autistic people. You know, why would we not? And I think that's the starting point, and it leads into this bigger narrative, doesn't it? Getting rid of the negative narrative around autism, because there is a reason that autistic people feel the need to mask, and that is because they're marginalised. They feel othered in society. So we've got to start, you know, it's a big task. We've got to start deconstructing that. We've got to, you know, work out why do autistic people feel like they need to mask, and how can we break down that stuff that is dangerous and very negative.
Absolutely, that's a big that's a big answer to a big
Oh,
question.
it's huge. The whole task is huge, isn't it? But I think, you know, masking isn't something in isolation, is it? We've got to look at the context, and we've got to look at, you know, why do people not feel safe? Why do they feel like they have to script conversations or give eye contact, or, you know, break through some of those really difficult sensory experiences just to feel like they belong in the world? You know, it's not acceptable. Why can't a young person who's stressed flap their hands a little bit if they need to? You know, it's about really changing that mindset, which is very much about this dominating negative narrative that exists, unfortunately.
Absolutely. So while we're waiting for society to change, is there any sort of practical tips you would give to parents about things they can do, or sort of resources they can access or read?
Yeah,
Um,
I think, you know, if families want to know more, I would read from real life experience. For a start off, you know, there's some wonderful work out there done. You know, for example, a research paper last year by Kieran Rose and Amy Pearson from Sunderland Uni. There's tons of stuff out there, but I think for families, some of it can be really hard reading. And you might need that broken down a little bit, you know, to how does, because it's very heavy going reading research papers. Actually, families might need it, you know, easy. They don't have time on their hands to sit and read a lengthy research paper. So I think certainly engaging with some of the resources we have on our family resource site would be really useful, because again, they have been created with autistic people. And I think, you know, I would love every education professional, every mental health professional, every social care professional to even understand, even start to use the terminology, understand, you know, that masking exists, and actually, what does that mean? What is the impact for that individual, and how is that presenting in that person? And I think, you know, without that, it's really, really difficult. So I think we just need to listen. We really do. And I think making sure that people are allowed to be their authentic self, you know, that is, it's vital, isn't it? And things like that. I mean, you know, in school settings, let's make sure that if somebody is masking or is anxious or stressed, we're giving them things that they need. So we're giving them movement breaks, perhaps, or I don't know, spending time drawing during playtime, whatever it is. It's about what works for that person to feel safe. A lot of this stuff we're talking about is people needing to feel safe, which we all need in the world, you know.
Thank you very much, Kerrie.
No problem. Lovely chatting to you.